Welcome to Story in a Bottle. I'm your host, Dan Maccarone. Each episode, our guests are leading voices in tech, media, and entertainment. And to get to know them better, we share their favorite cocktails as they share their stories.
Alexa von Tobel's success as a founder finds its roots in her unapologetic drive to make shit happen. From standing up a slightly shady art fencing business as a kid, to her desire to help people understand their own finances with LearnVest, she's always had a passion for building her own thing and pushing forward until they work. Over several glasses of Chardonnay, Alexa talks about how the success of LearnVest led her to her latest endeavor, investing in other founders with big ideas, with her venture fund, Inspired Capital, and about sharing her knowledge of investing through several books, including her latest for an unexpected audience, children.
So we would start as we always do. We talk about what we're drinking. So
Great.
you ordered.
Should I look this way or this way?
We're good.
Okay,
Here.
great.
We're talking.
Perfect.
It's a conversation.
Okay, great. Got it.
Don't even wear with the camera. Don't wear the mics. We're just having friends having wine.
Awesome. I like it.
What? Since you did offer wine or beer, but we chose wine. You chose white wine or Chardonnay. Why Chardonnay? Is that your white wine of choice?
Great question. I think if I'm gonna have a wine, I'm a Chardonnay or a rosé.
Okay.
Or an orange wine.
Oh, like the natural stuff.
Or
okay.
a natural
Sure.
wine. And if I'm gonna have a spirit, it's a tequila.
I feel like you used to drink martinis.
I've never been able to drink a martini.
Really?
If I had one martini, I would be under the table. That sounds very fun. I wish I could tell you.
I feel like I remember a time years ago when we met for drinks where you ordered a martini.
I had a martini.
I don't this is like got to be like 14 years ago. I'm
15.
thinking about 15 years ago. But tequila is your spirit.
Tequila.
Okay.
Tequila.
Do you do like a lot of sipping tequila, or is it
If
mixed?
I do tequila, it tends to be a skinny, spicy margarita.
Oh, you and I are cut from the same cloth on that
salt.
one. Yes. Well, that was all for me,
Yeah.
but I'm with you on
Yeah.
the rest of it. Yeah, yeah.
And like spicy.
We could have done that, by the way. That could have been an option for you.
Yeah, I was like, and then I feel like sometimes I'll enjoy just like a light beer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I want to talk so much to cover, and I know we have limited time. But what I want to talk about first is congratulations on closing your new fund. This will air a little bit after that happens, and
Perfect.
but I'm curious. I've like a couple of things I want to talk about that are right now. But since Inspired is doing its new fund now, let's talk about that. Like,
Cool.
you guys are early stage investors.
Yes, early stage generalist fund, investing around the country. We go napkin. I'd say napkin because I love helping somebody build a company from the ground up.
Yeah,
Napkin to Series A.
I love Napkin is like I actually really wanted to create an app like 15 years ago called Napkin Sketch.
I love
That
it.
was just like, get your idea down. And I actually built a tool to create a pitch deck via
loved it.
on WordPress. It was
Yep.
like enter in your problem you're solving, enter in like the features, enter in the audience, blah, blah, and we'll generate you the 8-page pitch deck.
I love that.
And I do it as a talk, as a workshop, where it's all, you have to make a business up around tacos. Because I'm like, just start with something. And then, and I think that like a napkin sketch, anyways, the idea of coming in with like my bare bones. How do you as an investor think about that when someone comes to you with that limited amount of information?
Yeah. Well, so first of all, we've known each other now for
15 years.
16
yeah,
maybe.
16, yeah.
even,
Yeah.
From when I was standing up LearnVest, where it was literally a napkin and sketched it and stood it up and ended up selling it 6 years later for $300 million to Northwestern Mutual. And I think for me, what I love is I really love the journey. I love the hard part of it's a napkin, it's an idea, it's against all odds, it's not going to work. And then corralling the team of people that should be around it and the mission and the vision. And at Inspired, one of the things we talk a lot about is like, we love the fearless entrepreneurs that are trying to build the inspired future, which is big, gnarly, scary problems facing society, whether it's climate change or the financial inequality that exists, or how do we live longer and healthier, and solving, retooling the workforce for AI, big, gnarly problems that are not easy to really build something that actually can work. So we like to be the teammates to those entrepreneurs, and typically they don't need us. They're the best most talented people who have been obsessing over an idea for a decade, and it's their life's work, and we get to give them capital and be on the ride and be there as great thought partners and teammates. But no, we like the big, gnarly, hard problems that few people have the guts to go after.
So are you looking at people then who are like SMEs in a particular area, or who have already built enough to like show traction, or what does that mean?
No, that's a great question. So in some cases, it's, it's somebody that looks a lot like me from when I wasn't an expert in personal finance, but I saw the problem and it got under my skin, and I'd written a business plan and spent years obsessing on a problem.
Yeah.
And then decided to go for it and dropped out of Harvard Business School and put in all my savings and like really went for it. So sometimes it's those sort of entrepreneurs. And then other times it really is somebody who it's been their life's work. They've, I was fortunate to back a dear friend of mine. His name's Matteo, and he's literally was the battery expert at Tesla. And this wasn't an inspired company. It was a personal bet. But we literally invested on a napkin. He wanted to go build a battery that could be the size of a building that could literally power a city.
Wow.
And like create clean energy in a way that like we can't even imagine.
Yeah.
And he is one of the most brilliant minds on the planet for batteries, and had batteries at Tesla. And then I'm very grateful that I gave him a little bit of capital, which
How
I gave
long
him
ago
more.
was this?
5.5 years ago. Inspired didn't exist.
Yeah.
Gave him some money, and now it's a multi-billion-dollar company reimagining climate.
Yeah.
And lots of work he still has to do. But those are the so it's like, it really is someone's life's work. And those are the sort of people we like to give capital to.
Do you find that when you're talking to founders, especially ones who have put their life's work into something, that they understand all the details and challenges that come with venture, like that come with investment? Or are you having to educate?
No, I think the smartest founders actually really understand the landscape. I think actually the smartest founders put thought into everything they do. So it's very rare that they're incredibly naive to what a venture fund is and how a venture fund works. They may not understand all the details.
Sure.
And, we try to give them the psychological safety to say, we don't expect you to like understand every term in this term sheet. Feel free to let us know if you have a question. But no, the best entrepreneurs tend to really understand. They put in the work to figure things out. They're resourceful. They're not naive. And when they don't know something, they're actually really good at figuring things out. So they tend to be pretty informed.
And by the time they come to you, do you feel like they've done their research so they know that you guys, they fit your thesis and vice versa?
First of all, so we're a generalist fund. We look at everything. I mean, we have looked at the range of nuclear to self-driving lawnmowers to fintech to healthcare to AI to consumer AI, enterprise AI, payments company. I mean, literally, we really are a generalist fund. We have categories of excellence that we've spent a lot of time building theses in. Fintech being one of them, healthcare being one of them, retooling of education and labor, industrial. We think we're going through the digitization of the industrial age. And so there's certain places where we have like blinking lights where we're like, come think of us, come find us. But the main thing to think about for Inspired is if you're a founder who really it's your life's work and you're gunning for something that is so unimaginably crazy, please make us your first phone call.
Yeah, that's so heartwarming to hear that. I mean,
first phone call.
Love that.
Yeah. Also, you and I are like New York City, investor entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Something once got under my skin 15-ish years ago. I was dropping out of Harvard Business School, bottom of the worst recession in 81 years. It was December 18th of 2008. And I remember somebody being like, on the East Coast, like the founders don't swing big. And I had a moment where I was like, it's fucking New York City. Like, what do you mean we don't swing big? Like, this is the grittiest.
I have a hard time believing that at all, especially at that time.
Totally.
Like thinking about the landscape of New York venture and startups, like 2008, 2009 is a incredible time period for our industry.
Totally. So that was like a purposeful curse word there, but like, no, it's New York City.
Yeah.
And so I love to think of, New York City as an underdog. We're in so many ways a capital of the planet.
Yeah.
And for people to think that like entrepreneurs aren't swinging massively here. So I was like, I want to stand up and fired in New York and put blinking beacon lights to say, if you're a founder trying to change the world for better, like come talk to us, please.
But it feels like also you have this, in a good way, this idea of helping people understand, and this is the reason I asked about the venture question, was people understand money, understand finance. And obviously that's what Learnvest was all about, but you have a book coming out in March.
I do, yes.
A kid's book, I believe, right?
Yes, I have little kids, and so I decided to put my money where my mouth was.
I have little kids as well, so I'm trying to figure out, should I get this for my daughter or no?
100%, yeah.
Okay, she's 9. Is it too young?
It's literally, it's meant for as soon as you can read, so 6 to really 15 plus.
So rebel girls, money matters.
Yeah.
So what is this? And why little, like when, so I was out with my, it was nice. I was out with my daughter this weekend out in LA, and she had her wallet. She was very proud. She had her wallet with her, and she had $47.
I have an almost 9-year-old, by the way, so we're very, cheers to that.
Cheers to
that.
Oh my gosh, wonderful little girls.
A gift, right? It's a true gift.
And she's so like the epitome of like myself and her mom and this combination. But she had this $47 in her pocket in cash. And I was like, girl, why are you carrying cash? But I was like, but you're carrying 47. She's like, I'm so proud of having this money. And she's like, I want to spend it, but like, I'm worried about it. I don't want to go to the American Girl store and spend everything, but I want to get something. And so I think about this, and I wasn't even thinking about this conversation until I read that you had this book coming up, and I was like, I wonder if Winter would enjoy this, like if this would be helpful for her.
Yeah. So, I am a certified financial planner. I built LearnVest. I became a New York Times bestselling author. I care so much about empowering people with their wallet. And like, this is a much deeper reason. But basically you can change someone's entire life if you teach them about money.
Yeah.
And I mentor a lot of people, which I really enjoy. And the first thing I tell everybody is, in fact, I told somebody that literally as I was taking an Uber over here, I was like, I need you, the first thing you have to do is read my book and then text me. This is a 28-year-old woman. Another one today was a 24-year-old. And I'm like, read my book. And then this is my adult book.
Okay, you have 2 adult
Financially
books.
Fearless.
Okay, because you have that and Financially Forward, right?
Yeah, Financially Forward was really about where tech's going around fintech.
Okay.
Very nerdy book. I loved it.
But Fearless. Tell me,
Yeah, Financially Fearless is how to understand the wallet.
Yeah.
And long story short, if you can empower somebody in their money, you can literally feed their lives. I mean, it's like a hygiene. If you can take care of your body, you can live longer. It's the same goes for money. And I was chatting with some great people that are really passionate about this mission. And Melinda Gates is one of them. And we were talking just about how many problems exist with women in the world. And I had this like moment where I was like, I have 2 daughters, and Rebel Girls is this amazing brand that's empowering young girls to see different prototypes of success. And I finally was like, I got to write this book. So literally on a weekend, sat down, got the book out, and it comes out on my daughter's 5th birthday. So I have 2 daughters. Awesome. And it's like a real present to her on the future I want her to feel like she can have.
For you, like, so you've written 2 books for adults and 1 book for kids now.
Yep.
And I've always dreamed of writing a children's book. And the thing that I always found, actually, so as hard as I found it writing an adult book, which was to me excruciating, but fun in some ways, the idea of a children's book, it always seems like it should be easier, but it seems harder.
It's so funny. That may be true.
I don't know. I have no idea if it's true.
So much fun thinking about how I would describe money to my 8, almost 9-year-old.
Yeah.
And I had such a good time, like trying things out on her. And I also really like to get the book out of my head. So I just like to audio record, and I just talk through the chapters of how I would explain it. And what's so funny is my 8-year-old was doing homework, and I was like, sweetheart, you have to sit down and write. Mommy like really wants to see you write out the paragraph. And she looked at me and she goes, Mommy, you wrote that whole book on audio. And I was like, I did. I like took during a weekend long walks and like just got it all out pretty quickly. And she was like, I watched you write a whole book on audio notes.
It's amazing.
And then it just got transcribed, and I was like, sweetheart, good one. You're right.
It's amazing how perceptive kids are.
Didn't miss a beat.
No, they like whenever I see my daughter, she's also like Googles me and like whatever. And she's like, well, Daddy, you did this. And I'm like, how do you know that? Like, how did you see, or like, whatever, like,
they're pretty scrappy. They're pretty resourceful.
They totally resourceful in a way that I don't know that we would have been when we were kids.
We didn't have Google.
We didn't have Google at all. No.
I didn't have Google till I was in college.
And lucky you, I didn't have Google till after college.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it's crazy to me how much our kids are online. I mean, do you limit how much your kids have access to screens? I talk to, whenever I have parents, not just on this show, but in life, and talk to them, I'm always curious about where people's comfortability is. It's very different.
Yeah. It's the sort of dynamic of we're teaching them coding and building video games. And so like learning how to do the tools.
Yeah.
But like very tough on limiting the usage. And like my kids are like all normal kids. We watched a movie. We actually watched Mrs. Doubtfire together, which was so fun this weekend.
So good.
So good.
Yeah. Holds up.
So no, we're normal parents where like everything within moderation is an okay thing. But I think social media, we feel crazily strict on.
Sure.
They're not getting their own devices.
So no iPad, no nothing.
There's iPads that mommy and daddy own.
Okay.
And that can be like checked out for mommy and daddy,
and
like with incredible moderation. It's amazing how quickly they go missing, by the way.
I'm sure. Yeah.
No, but so just, I think it's just like anything else in life. You got to teach people to manage their own moderation, to manage their own comfort. But I do think social media is the one that's like a third rail for us. And so there's this great professor at NYU, Jonathan Haidt, who's talking all about like the impacts, like the data-driven impacts from 2014 onward on kids. And it's like pretty scary stuff. And I think having like learned a little bit more, I think that's the third rail. I mean, I think one of the things we have to be, my husband and I we have 3 kids. We try to be really balanced about raising kids in thoughtful ways to give them independence, because I had a ton of independence. My parents trusted me. I was skateboarding all over where I grew up. I was riding my bike to school because we lived in a little gated community in Florida. I felt very free as a young little kid. And I feel like we like hover a lot more than we should.
We do.
And so trying to be like, get it, like, you got to solve this. Mom's not solving these problems for you is very much, I think, an important life strategy.
Yeah, we had to very much like go outside, don't come back until dinner time, at my dad's house. And we'd go outside and play tag or ride our bikes places, whatever. But so you grew up in Jacksonville, right?
Yep, I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida.
Home Tom Petty, I think, also, right? Is that right?
Yes. And like...
and many other people.
Yes, and many other people. Yes.
Just the first thing that came to my mind when I thought about Jacksonville. So the reason I think about, I love talking about people's childhoods, because I think entrepreneurs like yourself there's a thing about us that doesn't start when we're 20. It starts when we're kids. And I'm curious to hear, like, when you were a kid, like were there things in your mind you were like, I'm going to do something on my own just because I want to buy this thing, or I want to raise money, or I want to sell something, or whatever. Like,
there's this like great saying, which is like, show me your like kindergarten report card and like, it'll tell me who you are. So I had 2 older brothers.
I've never heard that, but I believe that.
I mean, now that you have children, you're like, yep. I have 2 amazing older brothers. And I think, and as you know, my only first cousin is basically like a third brother. So I have basically 3 brothers.
Yeah.
And I'm the baby.
But did you guys grow up together, you and John?
We didn't grow up together, but he's a decade older than me.
Okay.
And obviously we, I started up Learnvest and he came and joined me.
Yeah.
And so I basically have 3 brothers. And I think that tells you a lot about what you need to know about me, which is like my whole life, I didn't have anyone to play with if I couldn't keep up with and my middle brother is 4 years older. My other brother is basically 8 years older, and John is 10 years older.
Yeah.
So like to have friends, I like had to keep up with my brothers. And I think that like was a pace setting mechanism for my life. And they were incredible to me. But I was absolutely an entrepreneur quickly. Like I remember once I was a gymnast, and my mom was like, I'm not buying you more leotards. And I wanted like more leotards and more bathing suits. And she was like, sorry, like you have enough. And so I like created a company and like started selling things so that I could make the money.
What were you selling?
Well, this is where I got in trouble because instead of having like a lemonade stand, I like took art off our walls and like sold it up.
So you were fencing more than you were selling.
Maybe like robbing my parents, but
wait, like actual artwork?
oh no, like I also like once took like my mom had these beautiful little pieces of art and I like nailed them to my treehouse because it should be decorated.
Of course.
Which by the way explains my like grown up life. I love design and it's like a real passion of mine. But I got in a lot of trouble that day. So no, I mean I was constantly building things. No, but I that was very much in me and that personality was clear. And I felt like by the time I got to Harvard undergrad, I had a moment where I was like, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. Like it was this like light bulb moment where I like saw who I was, if that makes any sense. Like I always knew I had this energy and I was always inventing like, oh, that's broken. Like this should be the solution because it's a better solution and I'll go build it.
Right.
And then I one day was like, oh, I like love to build businesses. And then the crazy thing is like, I finally, when I was 20, looked up and was like, everyone in my family is an entrepreneur.
Well, so, okay, I want to ask this question because you say like you realize at this point you're an entrepreneur and maybe you did say that to yourself, but it's something I don't know that, like, I don't think I ever said that to myself till way later when I looked back and was like, oh, I guess that's what I am. Like,
it was like a light bulb went off.
That's fascinating.
It was like a fascinating light bulb. And then what's crazy is I was like, oh, wow, I really like to build things.
And then you're 20 at this point, you said?
I was
18?
I was undergrad.
Oh, yeah.
College,
So
20-ish.
Yeah.
I applied to Harvard Business School when I was a senior in college and got in. And it was like, because I was like, I am an entrepreneur and I should go be the best at that.
But as an entrepreneur, between, let's say, like before you go to Harvard Business School, in addition to the stolen art world work that you did, what other stuff had you done?
Stolen art world. I really like it put that way. No, I had started a little tutoring business when I was in high school. And then when I was on Harvard's campus, I started a magazine with some other people.
That's a business. That's a business.
Yeah, like a business.
By the way, my first company, my first startup was a magazine in Cambridge.
There you go.
In
we were
1990.
Probably Career Magazine, by the way.
Oh, mine was very different.
The unmet need of Harvard students that we didn't want funneled just into finance.
Of course not.
We were like, come on, guys, we can do better than this. Career Magazine was born.
It was called Career Magazine?
It's called Career Magazine.
Oh, cool.
And my husband's like best friends were some handsome men that I was like, can we take a photo shoot of you guys and your aspirations? And to this day, it's like, they make fun of me. But so I had this light bulb went off and then I actually stepped back and I like thought about it. And my grandfather started the von Tobel lumber yards through the Midwest. And like a relative was a founding frog of Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
And then my dad had started a medical practice, taking care of like very special needs kids.
And both your parents were in medicine, right?
Both my parents are in medicine. Yeah. And then my brother, also an entrepreneur, my other brother, an entrepreneur. And finally, like there was one day where I was like, oh, this has like been a thread of what I've seen people do.
Yeah.
And then it seemed less like an aha moment. So I like gave myself a lot of credit for the aha moment and then was like, actually, you're an idiot. It's been in like plain sight your whole life that everyone in our family has built things and entrepreneurship can look many different ways, but they've set out on their own to go build something that they believe in. So really, really fun aha moment. And then once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it.
No, of course.
We always joke I'm unemployable.
I think we all are in a lot of ways.
Totally.
And I know that like so before you started LearnVest, and I do want to get back to Harvard and HBS because I have some questions about this, but you were an employee at Morgan Stanley.
Totally.
Right?
Totally.
And how was that?
So it's so funny. I had a fabulous boss. His name was Joe Nagar, wonderful guy. Really good human being. I mean, I was on the desk where The Big Short happened.
Oh, yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
Like not.
Oh, right.
Not
that
maybe.
time. Yeah. No, that's
like literally.
This was 2008 when you were there, right?
2006 through 2008.
Yeah.
And one day I was like the very inexpensive analyst that like no one, I was, useless effectively.
Yeah. And
I came to work one day and there were security guards on the floor. And I remember being like, I don't know much about much, but this is not good. And the Big Short literally had happened. Howie Hubler ran the group, and I kind of felt like I was in a movie, if that makes any sense, because like people were being like walked off the floor.
I would imagine.
And they were like, "You're too inexpensive to fire, so like
You're fine.
Please stay and like do things." And I was really fortunate to Morgan Stanley. They like let me actually go and start building my business. I was like, I'm going to Harvard Business School. Can I leave early? But yeah, I watched that movie and was like, wow, I lived that. That's crazy. So
why go to more, if you know you're an entrepreneur, you realize this in college, you realize this when you're not even graduated yet, why not start something right away?
So it's funny, but I don't have any like regrets in life. And one of the only like ones I would put in a bucket was my senior year of college. I wanted to drop out. And my mom, who was a single mom who raised me, she was like, please just graduate. Like, she was just like, graduate. Like I at that point gotten into HBS, and she was like, just graduate from at least one of them. Like just one of them.
Please. Yeah.
But I was so intoxicated by building something. And it was like, it felt so natural. I felt like I was wearing the skin I was supposed to wear, that I was like, it was really hard for me to not. So I probably would never have been successful and everything would have gone sideways. And I still think LearnVest was even a little too early in general. It was a miserably hard business. That's where you and I met, obviously.
Of course, yeah. Oh, we're going to get to LearnVest. Don't you worry.
Yeah, but so basically, I was the entrepreneur. I was such an entrepreneur. I actually tried. And my mom was like, please just don't. And I, at that point, was like, you are paying for my college and you've put a lot behind my life. And like, I will get this degree. Right. Thank you.
So when you say you tried, so you obviously had your magazine that you were doing, career magazine. Did you try other things at the time?
I was starting to build LearnVest when I was a senior.
Oh, because you had the idea was there.
I just thought it was just truly stupid that I could like go to such a fancy, great school and like know nothing about personal finance. I was very good at math, naturally very good at business. And I remember being like, I can't believe I can be good at these things, yet I've never learned about personal finance. Yet it's maybe the only finance that actually matters.
Well, and I know we're going to get to this, but I do think you're totally right, because, and I remember I think we talked about this when I first met you, because
100% did.
My first job out of grad school was working during the .com boom, but I was working at an agency. My client was GE Financial Services.
Yep.
And this is why LearnVest was for me, such a seminal thing to work on, because the first project,
high five, by the way.
Yeah. Fuck yeah. The first thing I worked on was this thing for GE called the Center for Financial Learning. It was all about helping people who were not making $100,000 a year or more. It was about helping regular people learn about saving for college, saving for a car, saving for a house. By the way, I was 22. I didn't know fuck all about that. And I sat there and I was really mad to work on this, because I was like, I'm a media entertainment guy. I don't want to work on this. And I learned so much just working on this. And I realized how important it was to get people educated about this stuff at the time, just through the year-long experience of launching this site. And what you say about you might be an entrepreneur, you might be Harvard educated, but you don't know. Like, you don't know. Most people aren't educated about this stuff at all. And it's so frustrating.
And what's worse is you only get support if you have lots of money.
Yeah.
So it'd be like if the healthcare system only took care of you because you were healthy.
Mm-hmm.
That makes no sense.
Don't get me started on that. Yeah.
It makes no sense.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you have lots of money, lots of people will help you with your money. If you have no money, you get no help. And also, if you make mistakes, you're screwed. So it's like getting out of credit card debt is not easy. In fact, it's toxically hard.
Mm-hmm.
Hurting your credit score, fixing it, not easy, toxically hard.
Student loan debt also.
All of it.
Yep.
So I was like, this is such a broken system, and we need to empower people. So anyways, so I wrote my third book for kids, because I was like, this will be a lifelong journey.
You're gonna start this early.
Of just paying it forward
Yeah.
to the ecosystem.
So how does this work? So you're in college, you want to start this, and you realize it's not the right, also you want to graduate, but you could have started it after graduation, but it wasn't right.
It was, the idea was percolating. And then one day I was literally walking in my apartment and the like word LearnVest came out of my head. And I was like, it's the 3 pillars of money. You have to learn about it, you have to earn it, and you have to invest it. LearnVest. And
I see what you did there.
I also like truly was like, this name sucks, but I was like, it's the right name.
Yeah.
And so LearnVest was born.
Yeah.
And the second it was born, it couldn't be unborn. And from that day forward, I always joke the company ran me. I didn't run the company. I cared so much about it that it really was like a first child.
But you didn't start it then.
I started it May of 2007.
Okay.
I didn't drop out of business school until December 18th of 2008.
Right. So let's go back a little bit because the question I was going to ask you about HBS was you have this idea, you know that you want to be an entrepreneur. You have some sense of how to run a business. You started a couple, right?
Yep.
Some legal, some not.
Yep.
And
yeah.
And sorry, I shouldn't keep going back to that. But I guess my question is, so you decide you want to do this, and you say, okay, I've been accepted at HBS. I'm gonna maybe did you deferred it or no?
I deferred.
Yeah, you deferred it. So why do you think HBS? Why did you say I need to go to HBS before I start this company? Because I know you ended up dropping out, but you made a choice.
Yeah, and I think when I applied to HBS, I was a senior in college. I didn't think I would get in because I was 20, 21.
Yeah.
And they had this. I was the first guinea pig. To my knowledge, I was the first cohort of kids they let apply. And they were going to give you feedback. So they were like starting to test the idea of coming younger, and they were going to give me feedback. And I expected the feedback to be like, here's the 3 things we want you to get better at. And instead they were like, come to HBS, defer for 2 years, come when, in 2008. And I was like, perfect, because I'd already gotten this job. So it was sort of everything I was looking for. And then I had a moment where I was like, HBS is where entrepreneurs go.
Which was true, 100% at the time, especially.
And then I got there,
and
I realized that you couldn't build a company and do HBS at the same time. You had to attend every class to get grades. And I'm like a nerd who likes to get good grades. And I was like, literally, you couldn't do both. Actually, I ended up in the hospital from being so like deeply overworked. And I always tell young people, I'm like, the work ethic required to do anything that matters is profound. Like, I literally ended up in the emergency room from just like truly working so much that I was so deeply dehydrated because I was just drinking coffee, and like I was sick. I was like, and my mom was like, you have no candles left. The candle is not even being burned at both ends. Like you don't have a candle.
Yeah.
And she was like,
your wick is gone, basically.
She was like, this doesn't work.
Yeah.
And Lehman Brothers had gone under, and it was the worst recession in 81 years. And I was like, well, I choose this company I want to build, and I'm going to go build it.
Yeah.
And I just then had to have the gut. So I dropped out because I realized that actually at that time, HBS is an amazing school. And like, truly, I love HBS, but I had to drop out and go build it.
I mean, your peers in your class did pretty well too. So a lot of them did.
A lot of them.
Yeah. But I was over the years, I've had so many conversations about the benefits or not benefits of business school. And I always go back and forth on it. Like, what do you feel like you took away from the time you had there, if anything?
I made a lot of friends. And I made some like really, really genuine, like dear lifelong best friends.
Yeah.
People that like sparkle that I feel really blessed to be buddies with. I made a lot of friends. I had my 25th birthday party when I was there. And that's pretty funny because it was really fun. I basically had a 25th birthday party and then left. So I was like, we're going in. And no, I think the people are spectacular. And then I remember I took a management course, and I was 24 taking a management course. I turned 25. I basically could manage like marbles. I mean, I knew nothing about managing anything. And I remember just like learning to like admire a problem from many angles. And it kind of stuck with me in a way that actually served me quite well as I was becoming a first-time CEO who like sucked at first and hopefully got a little bit better every year.
But so when you found LearnVest and you drop out, where's the idea? Because I remember where it was when I met you. I remember and I came in pretty early, but not right away. I mean, you already had like Caroline Waxer there. You had John, obviously.
Oh my God, it was awesome.
So I remember you working in that small office. I think maybe one of your.
No, it was hold on.
Was it Rose's office?
No,
or?
it was wait for it. The Halloween. It was 23rd and Broadway.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Or like we had 2 rooms.
Yes. I remember, yeah.
And we could fit like really 5 people, but we fit 8 people. No, just like at one point so what I've learned about myself is like I am deeply comfortable swimming against the grain and like totally having an opinion that nobody else has.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. I have actually been my whole life. And I think that like serves me quite well at Inspired because I'm really comfortable having a point of view that nobody else agrees with, which is, I think, great investors are really good at doing that. But LearnVest, we were standing it up. There was no fintech.
Yep. Mint may have been around.
Mint got acquired on September 15th of 2009.
Okay.
I launched on stage at TechCrunch 50. Mint got acquired that day for, I think, $170 or $175 million. And I was up to literally explain LearnVest after. And I couldn't tell if I was devastated or proud because I was like, okay, good. This category exists. Fintech wasn't a category. And then as I presented, the entire panel was like, this is the worst idea I've ever heard. And we were a TechCrunch 50 company, and you can find the video.
Yeah.
And they were like, why would anyone manage their wallet on the phone? Why would people be comfortable? Why do young people even care about money? And I was like, I actually think it's going to be really important.
Your whole focus, I mean, if I remember back to those days working with you, the whole focus was education and specifically around college students, I think.
And then it quickly evolved to families.
Yeah.
To everybody, because we basically became TurboTax for financial planning. But we launched that day on stage, September 15th of 2009. I'll never forget it. And I joke, I got tech punched. Like it wasn't TechCrunch, it was like tech punch.
Yeah.
They were like, your idea sucks. And I was like, let me tell you why you're wrong.
Yeah.
And we got a standing ovation. But I got off stage and I was like, why did I fly here for this?
Yeah.
And the day that we sold, I was 9 months pregnant. And I was like, oh, shoot, I have to go on like television today. I haven't even thought of that yet because I was managing, and my husband went in and took out the dress that I wore that day. And he was like, this is the dress that you're wearing.
I love that.
And I looked at him and I was like, you're the best husband on the planet. I will squeeze into that dress, 9 months pregnant. But no, like it was, people thought the idea sucked. I mean, it was so contrarian. Fintech wasn't a category.
Yeah.
They later were like, we're going to put you on the cover of Forbes. And I remember being like, it's like the financial revolution for millennials. And I remember being like, that was 2014, August 5th of 2014. Fast forward, I started in 2007. It took 7 years for somebody to be like, this makes sense.
Right. But over those 7 years.
That's important to say. 7 years till someone was like, I agree that this makes sense.
But wouldn't you also say that most companies, most startups take somewhere between 5 and 8 years to get to the point where you guys were like, and I think what I remember well, and I we only worked together for a short period of time, maybe like 12 months, maybe 18 months. Like you guys evolved that company. Like you just said, you went from college students to families. Like your thesis changed.
We just followed the users.
Yeah. You were smart to, I think, look at your data and evolve that. Like as a founder, as someone who's never done that before, I think if you think back to this, like so many years ago, how did you kind of understand how to do that? Like, how did you realize, okay.
I didn't. I mean, I was trusting my intuition, which is, I knew to be customer obsessed. I was customer number one. Remember, I was building a company that I wish existed for me.
Yeah, you're building it. Not that everyone should build companies for them, but you were a customer. I always like to say, we're never building it for ourselves. We are not the customer, but we could be a customer.
Yes.
And I think,
correct. And Inspired's no different. I'm building literally a venture fund that I wish existed for me as somebody who like was going for.
Oh yeah, I want to talk about raising money for Learnvest too. But you started it without venture to start,
For Learnvest, I self-funded, which I used all my savings, which is not a good financial plan, by the way.
But sometimes you can't raise at the beginning, you know?
There was nothing. No. That's why Inspired exists. There was no capital.
Yeah.
There was New York Angels, David Rose, you mentioned.
Yeah.
You get a 25 to 50K check that would pay for your engineer for like 6 weeks.
Right. Can you imagine $50,000 does not go far?
No, it didn't. It didn't. It one engineer.
Right.
After all of your 13% XYZ on top of like a salary. And I remember being like, well, that doesn't get us anywhere. So I bootstrapped Learnvest for a year and finally I literally passed the hat and we got it kind of up and running. And then I was the customer number one. So I just followed my nose. So every night as I was going to bed, would read customer feedback. I read every single piece of customer feedback. And one day I was like, when we started as content, we started a content site for women with money. And then we quickly, like women focusing on money. And then we transitioned very quickly once we had tools to being a product. And then we transitioned to a family software for people getting a financial plan. And I just, every night would just read every customer feedback. And I'd be like, we have 25% of our users are men wanting to get a handle around their wallet. And the age was between 20 and 70. And I kept being like, this isn't a young person's product. There's nothing in the market for the masses. And like, had I been even smarter, I would have built the next version of the Robin Hood, which luckily
But the world wasn't ready for that yet. Let's be honest.
It was not even remotely ready. Great point. And so I was just like, we're building TurboTax for financial planning and there's nothing that exists. And so we are content tools advice. At one point I opened a call center and started adding advisors into it. And then I was like, we're open 24 hours a day. Why? Because why are banks closed on weekends? That's when people manage their money.
That's when they sit there on the kitchen table, on a Saturday morning or Sunday morning, and they go through everything.
We all have jobs.
Right.
That's how we exist.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, I remember there was an ad on TV where the bank being like, we are open on Saturdays from 10 until 2. And it was like a chain and a ball. It was like the worst ad ever. And I remember being like, we can do better. We can do better. And so we opened 24 hours a day. And I was like, we're going to be open 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Our advisors will be available for whenever you need a financial plan. We'll cover every zip code, every time zone. Let's go. And
are there issues with that in a legal standpoint, like state by state, or did you have to? You can just find.
I mean, we were an RIA, registered investment. So at age 26, I was running a registered investment advisor legally. Hence, back to my following the rules and not going to jail.
Right. Not going to jail is a big thing.
Take it very seriously.
Yeah, of course.
Like my whole life.
Yeah.
No, and I just was like, I had a lot of responsibility as a young person on my shoulders. But I just followed the customer. Back to your question, I followed the customer and they just kept telling us what they wanted. And I was like, we're going to build it. We're going to build it. We're going to build it.
I think one of the hardest things to do as, never mind a founder, just as any person, is to kind of admit when, I don't want to say you're wrong, but wrong is fine. When you need to move in a different direction, let's say. And as you say, you follow the customer, you look at the data, you look at where things are going. For you, how hard was it to resist like your instinct to be like, I want to go this way, but they're saying that way?
No, at first I was so lucky that I had a team of people that were way more experienced than me. And they were very, very good at being like, that doesn't work. This does work. This is a terrible idea. That's a good idea. And so I felt really empowered to just like constantly listen to them.
Yeah.
And then there were certain times where I was like, I think this thing makes perfect sense. We got to do it. And I just trust my instincts. But no, I mean, we threw away tons of bad ideas. We were to my, like, people used to be like, what kept you up at night when you were building Learnvest? 3 things. It was never competition. There was no competition.
Oh yeah, no, yeah,
None.
sure.
It was, we were like a true first mover. If anything, I used to be like, God, I wish there was more competition so that people would like be feeling the category being built. I always joked my biggest competition was apathy, which is like just nothing existed. So it was easy to ignore your wallet.
Right.
And I was like, that's just wrong. And what kept me up at night was everything was hard. Everything was hard. And I actually think it makes me a better investor because nothing about our business was easy. And we had to shut down ideas, delete ideas, like everything. Zoom didn't exist. Like we were creating phone calls between advisors. No, there was no Zoom. Think about that. Zoom was so amazing if you could see your advisor.
You had maybe WebEx if you were at best, if you were, and most people didn't have that.
And not even like that was like, you would be forcing that on your customer to do that.
Terrible experience.
So no, it was just like everything was an uphill battle and we were probably a little early. But we built something that truly was a standalone, unique. We built truly cash flow based financial planning software, which is very nerdy. I became a certified financial planner. I was like, if I'm going to do this, I got to do it right.
Yeah, you weren't that when you started the company.
No, I took my CFP, which is like your doctor test of money.
Yeah.
Like weeks before I got married, during Hurricane Sandy. Like
perfect
I
timing.
studied via candlelight. I can't make this shit up. My fiance at the time, husband, was like, this is a joke. I took my test like November 12th or whatever that, it was miserable. And then I wrote my book right before we got married.
Right. Yeah.
Cause I was like, if we're going to do it, we got to do it.
So I know we're running out of time, but I have a couple quick things.
Go for it.
One is one of the things that you did to start, which I've seen other companies do really well, and you guys did really well, was you didn't just try to focus on managing people's money or wallets. You did rely on content. We talked earlier about Caroline Waxler, also former guest of the show.
C-Wax. Love C-Wax.
Love her to death.
Love C-Wax. C-Wax, I hope you're listening.
She probably is. But a lot of people don't get the fact that content is a great gateway to building trust and loyalty. And how did you think about that when you guys first started, like knowing that that's something you wanted to do?
It was really intuitive where I was like, I mean, it was intuitive and it was financially driven. I was like, I can't afford engineers, so I have to build content. So I started writing content until I was lucky enough to hire Caroline Waxler to be like, please, you're better at content than I am. I should not be writing the content.
Right.
But I became an expert because I was like the only way to actually start building a user base. So content was, remember, like, think about like MailChimp and a lot of those products.
They didn't know. This is 2009. So you're looking at like the Motley Fool might be a place you could go to for some stuff, or I mean, it was, I don't know, there was places like that.
Nothing.
Yeah.
There was,
that's nothing approachable either. Motley Fool is not approachable if you don't know anything about finance. You know?
Totally.
Yeah.
So we were like building it from scratch. And I actually think in some ways that was a massive advantage because there was no competition.
Yeah.
So we got to be an N of one, but it was a lonely N of one. So it was like, on one hand, you know, I feel for entrepreneurs today where you have like, you wake up and you have 50 competitors.
Yeah.
We didn't have that, but also no one understood that we existed or that the category existed. So it's like, pick your poison.
So, okay. So the end of, you exit after 6 years to Northwestern Mutual.
Yep.
And, you know, I always
sold on a Wednesday, had my daughter that weekend. My first time.
That's quite a weekend, or quite an end of the week, if you will.
Sold on a Wednesday, had my daughter that weekend.
I talk to a lot of founders about exits, and you know, sometimes we talk about that moment. You're like, oh my God, money, blah, blah. But I always think that it's an emotional situation because it's something that you bore, like your kid, like literally your kid. Like for you, I mean, there's this.
It was
what
so
was that?
emotional.
Yeah, tell me about that.
It was incredibly, I felt deep responsibility to getting it right. It wasn't about me. We had customers, millions of users, shareholders. I remember at one point being like, we have hundreds of shareholders, hundreds. So I was like, and I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was in the hundreds, like 300-400 shareholders.
Yeah.
Between employees, former employees, et cetera, et cetera. Because when we got acquired, we were 200-ish employees. So I had them. I then was like, I had the board, and I just remember being like, I'm going to bring all the options to the board and we're going to make a decision. And on March 25th at 11 a.m., we voted as a board to decide to sell the company to Northwestern Mutual. They called us at 10:30 and gave us their verbal approval. And there's a photo of me like with a thumbs up, 9 months pregnant, literally like in my tech punch dress.
Yeah.
Giving a thumbs up to my husband. And the 5 other team members in the apartment being like, they've verbally approved. Now we have to go and like make our decision. It was just incredibly emotional. Learnvest was like born out of a place of incredible like love for me. I lost my dad when I was younger, watched my mom have to manage our finances. And so I was like, I want to build a company that solves that for America.
Yeah.
So I felt like I was making the right decision. And you know what? I think we did. Our software now runs the entire company. And
it's incredible.
It really is. And the CEO who just stepped down sent me on his day of retiring a text, which is beautiful. He was like, I still think my best decision was, making a bold move to acquire you guys. And he's just a formidable human being. So no, it was the right call. And that was a judgment call. But I took it so seriously and was very, very, I look back, I'm like, I was more mature then than I am now in some ways. Like, I was like, wow. Like I surprised myself. I mean, in the inverse surprised myself in other ways, but no, it was an important moment.
And last question, because I know you have to go. You obviously you had to stay there for a little bit, and you did stay there for a little bit before you started Inspired. So many founders do end up going into the world of investment, and I think in a very altruistic way. Not altruistic in that they don't want to make money, but altruistic in that they want to spend the rest of their lives doing something that they needed or had people do for them. For you, starting Inspired, like, when you left Learnvest as an employee or left Northwestern as an employee,
Yeah.
like what made you say, all right, I'm going to start this?
It was the same Learnvest dynamic.
Yeah.
I was infected. And my husband looked at me and he was like, oh no, I know this. He was like, I know exactly what this is. And like my husband's dad was my first lawyer to ink Learnvest. Literally, like my mom was the president. My husband's dad stood it up. Like my husband, Cliff, has been with me through it all since I was 23.
Amazing.
And he was like, oh, I know exactly what's happening here. And so I built Learnvest. I love investing. Like my core, I am somebody who is really thoughtful about like, how do we make great financial decisions? And then I love to build. And so I was like, this was like the marriage of all of the things that I love to do in one place. And I got to build it with a team of people. So it sort of came together. And then one day my husband looked at me and was like, I know that look. Like, and Inspired was born. It was that simple. And the next day was like, here's my plan. It was that simple. Like truly
Amazing.
The best ideas are that simple. And we want to back the founders that are going to go build the companies that really take on the biggest challenges that the planet faces. And those are the hardest ones and they're impossible. And we like the impossible.
Cheers to that. Thank you so much, Alexa.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I love your bar.
That's it for this episode of Story in a Bottle. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review for us in the iTunes store or wherever you listen. I'd like to thank our producers at 1459 Production Management and Charming Robots Eric Bowie for his continued production support. And of course, I'd like to thank my guest, Alexa von Tobel, for graciously giving her time